Hello, my name is Nico. This is going to be a bit of a strange video for this channel. I mainly just upload my music on here. However, I want to present to you, as the title presents, a measured response to Alex Yard. Did Toby Fox plagiarize / co-compose Spear of Justice? Let me break down this title in case you aren't familiar with this whole situation. Who is Alex Yard exactly? He's a music theory YouTuber. He specializes in the Sonic series, mainly focusing on Sonic CD. He also talks about some other Sega games in general. He is an English major. In one of his older videos, he talks about how he has a degree in, I think specifically English literature. Don't quote me on that. But he believes that due to his advanced understanding of the English language, he's able to explain music theory concepts in a way most people can intuitively grasp. So that's what a lot of his channel is dedicated towards. He also has a side channel dedicated to, quote, debunking fallacies in gaming, music theory, and beyond, which is a little bit more of his controversial stuff, but I'm not getting into that for the most part here. So who am I exactly? I'm going to assume you're not familiar with me if you're watching this. I am a pianist and percussionist. I am a composer and producer. I'm currently pursuing an undergraduate in music composition. I'm mainly focused on EDM and electronic music in general. However, I also create more traditional / classical works. My Piano Sonata No. 1 is currently about to be performed in September by the Raleigh Symphony Orchestra in one of their chamber concerts. So once I get a recording of that, I'll upload it here. But aside from that, I am trying to say with all of this, not that I'm smarter than Alex Yard per se, but I am very, very educated when it comes to music. I've been making music for about 10 years now, and I've gone through some deep rabbit holes. So hopefully I'm able to try and explain my opinion in a mostly non-biased way. Now, we have the claim. Spear Justice, which was premiered with Undertale in 2014, is accused of stealing the main riff / motif and intro structure from By God Forsaken by Skyfire. I have the songs linked here because I was originally going to play them. However, due to worries about copyright, I'm going to avoid that for the time being. But this is the claim that Alex Yard has originally focused on. And so I want to try and deconstruct this in a way. Now, the reason why I am making this response at this time is partially because, first off, he still believes this. He made a response to Shay's comment posted on his main channel video that he made the response on his side channel. So I'm not entirely sure why he took that long. I think it was maybe about like 2 years or so, pretty much, between when Shay originally commented and when Alex Yard posted the video, but that's another story. But the other thing is that a lot of the response videos I've seen, although I do think for the most part they are fine, they don't really focus on the music theory, and they don't focus on the legal aspect of all of this. And that's what I want to do in this presentation. I want to actually go into the nooks and crannies, because Alex Yard originally emphasized that the people should focus on the music theory and not on any personal qualities. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in this video. So let's start with history of the allegations as presented by Alex Yard. Alex Yard originally makes a video analyzing Spear of Justice on April 10, 2023, which is an alright video. I watched it. I don't have any major complaints. It's fine. And this is where the timeline shifts. User Ninstar Rune makes a comment on the day the video was uploaded, claiming that there were many songs that sound similar to Toby Fox's songs, including Spear of Justice, to the point that it is, quote, likely plagiarism. I have a screenshot of the comment here. I'll be reading it for those that are just listening to this. Unfortunately, a lot of Toby Fox's music seems to be heavily inspired by, if not outright ripping off, existing songs to the point where it crosses over from being coincidence to likely plagiarism. Relevant to this video, Spear of Justice, Regular Undyne, draws heavily from Skyfire's 2001 release By God Forsaken. And then they go on to list a couple of other similarities, and they end off the comment with this. This isn't to say that music's history has never been derivative or based on pre-existing concepts. After all, there's only 13 notes that could be used, so at some point there will be similarities. But if you dig deep enough, I'm sure you'll find other examples that are difficult to deny. Yard then replies to this comment about a year later on June 2nd, 2024, agreeing with Nsaru and pointing out the Skyfire example in particular as the most blatant and undeniable intellectual property theft. Again, I have a screenshot of the comment here. I'll read it out for those that are just listening. Just wanted to say sorry for never responding to this, and I thank you for all these details. I did see it back then, but didn't look that much into it until now, and I'm disgusted by what I'm finding. I think this is really shameful stealing of intellectual property that deserves to be exposed. It looks like there are legions of fans who would try to pressure people out of the discussion by saying, quote, if Toby Fox is plagiarist, then every musician is. It's just inspiration. That's how it works. That's totally bogus. These compositional similarities are on par with the lawsuit where Tom Petty, quote, in parentheses, rightfully and successfully, sued Sam Smith and as a result was giving song co-writing credits and revenue royalty sharing. I have to wonder why the Skyfire example is not more widely identified and discussed, given that it's probably the most blatant and undeniable intellectual property theft. The melody, the Alchemist chord stabs, and the turnaround, the extended turnaround, and even the blatant key change not too far into the track. I think this is really wrong and inappropriate and slimy, and I'm considering making a video about it. Malachi made a response video asking if Alex Yard accused Toby Fox of plagiarism. I'm here to say yes. This comment, as far as I know, is still up on that original Undying analysis video. You can still find not only Ninstar Rune's comment, but Alex Yard's reply to it. So, from here, Alex Yard is convinced that this is intellectual property theft, to the point where Toby Fox can lose a lawsuit if Skyfire 1 sued Fox. So, continuing on June 3rd, he would announce a live stream on June 5th, wherein he tries to discuss if Toby Fox plagiarized Spirit Justice. He presents this with the stated intention of provoking discussion about the accusations. However, based off of the comment I have shown, it seems that he was more interested in proving that Toby Fox plagiarized Skyfire. He will later upload a video onto his main channel in August 2024, repeating these accusations along with some defenses of his arguments, claiming that he isn't accusing Toby Fox of plagiarism. And this is where a lot of people get a little bit confused, because it seems obvious that Alex Yard is at the very least saying that Toby Fox is on legally problematic grounds when it comes to similarities between two different works, which most people would interpret as plagiarism. So, continuing on then, I'm very interested in one specific aspect of his original comment. He claimed that this is similar to when Tom Petty sued Sam Smith over copyright infringement between two songs. So, the question is then, what does Alex Yard have to prove, legally speaking, in order to demonstrate that Toby Fox violated copyright of Skyfire? Well, there's a couple of things here. Three main ones that I've listed, technically two, but I'll get into that. The first thing that he would have to prove is access to the person accused of plagiarizing must have been exposed or have heard the song. I'm going to be using Gravy Hudson or the rapper Flame versus Katy Perry. That lawsuit is very useful and also very similar to these accusations, as I will explain later. But in that case, for example, Flame is a successful Christian rapper. He, I think, got nominated for like Grammys or something like that. So Katy Perry, as someone who is also nominated for Grammys, would have been, at least within the area of Flame, would have been reasonably exposed. In the case of a more popular case of Ed Sheeran and Marvin Gaye is a very successful artist. Let's Get It On is like probably one of the most popular pop songs to ever been made. And so Ed Sheeran at some point would have heard this song. It doesn't really matter. It's a bit of like I'm trying to think. It's like eating eggs, right? If you're within a certain amount, like if you're within a certain area, you're going to be eating eggs at one point or another. Um, so that's the first part is access, and then substantial similarity. I separate substantial similarity and audience opinion. They're both part of the same thing. However, I'm using substantial similarity to focus on more objective qualities of the music, that is music theory, and audience opinion to refer to audience opinion. But they're both referred to the same thing. But with substantial similarity, two songs must share unique musical ideas that are protected by the older songs as copyright. And then with audience opinion, relatively simple. The songs would have to sound similar enough to an average audience that to them it would constitute copyright infringement. For a proper copyright lawsuit, like in the case of Apple v. Microsoft, they must look similar to both the expert, in this case the music theory expert, and the average audience for substantial similarity to be established. If one of these sides falters, then your case is screwed. So let's focus first on access. Is there a reasonable way that Toby Fox would have been exposed to this song? The issue with this specifically is that Yard has explicitly avoided trying to figure out how Toby Fox would have come into contact with this song. And this is to avoid accusing him of plagiarism. So I have a clip here from like near the end of his main channel video.
In the future. I say if applicable because I'm not willing or even able to make any formal accusation of a timeline of what went on behind the scenes. You have to consider any plausible possibilities, like Toby collaborated with a composer who presented these composition choices as original, or Toby had an agreement with Skyfire or their representative. These are just two quickly brainstormed possibilities, and there's so many other potential ones, so it won't do any good to speculate further until Toby clarifies.
So, because Alex Yard cannot give a reasonable avenue for Toby Fox to have come into contact with Skyfire, and since Skyfire is not a massively successful band with big news everywhere, this is a little bit of a subjective thing. I'm aware that Skyfire, for the most part, seems to have been successful in some way. They've operated for a long time. I assume they were successful. I'm mainly referring to the fact that they weren't nominated for Grammys. They didn't have any big nationwide tours that I can recall. Like, they're not a household name, is what I'm trying to say. So, with those two things in mind, I have to say, until there is further evidence that Toby Fox couldn't have reasonably been exposed to this song. This is not to say that Toby Fox has never heard this song. It is very possible that a friend maybe was a fan of Skyfire and showed it to Toby Fox. However, that would rely on personal communications that seem to have not been properly documented that took place decades ago by now. Or, well, more accurately, maybe like a decade and a half ago. Either way, my point is that Alex Yard does not give any reason for us to believe that Toby Fox could have heard this song. And so we're just kind of left to assume he didn't. Now, let's go into the audience opinion, because this is relatively the easiest thing to prove. As I've said, with substantial similarity in a proper court case, you need to have the expert and audience opinion agreeing with each other that there is substantial similarity between two works in order to justify a copyright lawsuit. Here, Alex Yard has not proven this, at least based off of how the comments presented. This is just a small selection of comments from his main channel video and Malachi's response video. Most people seem to agree that these songs do not sound similar. I'll point out one specifically from the breakfast menu here. It's a different key, it's a different melody, it's a different tempo, it's a different time signature, end of argument. So, I don't think if internet people, like just random audience members, are going to agree that these two songs sound similar, I don't think Alex Yard will be able to convince a proper jury that these two songs sound similar. So, next up, and this is the big part, is how similar are these songs objectively? When we open the hood of these songs and we look at the music theory, we look at the structure underpinning everything, how are these songs similar to each other? And we have two major sections that we're going to be looking at. First off is with the main riff, and second off is with the structure. Let's focus on the riff first, since it's up on top. He points out specifically the timing of these notes. They happen within a relatively similar time frame, and they have like same note values and whatnot. He points out the contour, and he points out chord tones, which we'll get into why he points that out specifically. Contour itself, as shown here, doesn't establish similarity. Many songs can have similar contours without ripping off each other. Andrew Cunningham has spoken about this issue with Gaster's motif and the Deltarune soundtrack, which this is a bit of a long thing, but hopefully this will explain my point.
Alright, here's the part where you learn why I spent so much time going on about intervals. The purported Gaster quote in Cardcastle is, unlike previous examples, in the bass line. That's not a huge deal, Beethoven hides motifs in the bass, so Toby can too. What is a huge deal though is that this pattern isn't Gaster's theme. As discussed, Gaster's motif is characterized by a semitone on the bottom and 7 semitones on top. The Cardcastle bass line is 7 semitones on the bottom and 2 semitones on top, outlining what I think is just a G minor 7 chord. Not only are these intervals different, it's not even a case of just shifting one note. As far as I can tell, the simplest way to turn Gaster's theme into this bass line would be to move the bottom note a semitone lower and then flip the entire thing upside down. But safe to say, that's not actually the thought process people are going through when they hear Gaster's theme here. In terms of audible similarity, it's really just the contour. Up, up, down, down. Widening the net that far puts us back in the hell dimension where Adele and Chopin have referenced Gaster, so I'm not a big fan of this one.
I admit this is a little bit later, so there is a chance that he explains the Adele and Chopin themes a little bit earlier in the video. I admit I've not gone too far into this. However, this hopefully explains my point, that if it's not enough for Andrew Cunningham to say that two motifs are the same, I don't think a court will believe that these riffs are the same because of the contour. Next up, we have this thing of chord tone substitution, and I'll play this clip just to show what Alex is talking about when he talks about chord tone substitution.
Okay, yeah, you guys heard that, right? So what I'm going to do now, right? This is the kind of thing that I might assign to music theory students. I don't know if I got quite an assignment like this. Music theory teacher says, hey, pick a song by the Beatles, rework it by substituting chord tones for other chord tones and non-chord tones for non-chord tones, right? So you're going to have something that generates somewhat of a different sonic effect, pun intended, but it's going to use different notes, okay? All right, thanks for confirmation, Koya. Glad.
So, I'm not entirely sure what he's talking about here. Although, theoretically, yes, that would be a fun assignment, I've not heard of this idea of chord tone substitution at all. I'm an undergraduate. I've been here for like 3 years now. I've never been assigned this assignment. I've never read this in any textbook, not in my college textbook, not in Schoenberg's Fundamentals of Music Composition, not in Bishop Pershichetti's 20th Century Harmony. Not heard of this at all. Not a single bit. I'm not entirely sure where he got this idea. If you're writing a different melody, it doesn't matter if they share chord tones. They're different melodies. So that wouldn't hold up in court. You know? I'm genuinely kind of curious where he got this kind of idea that like chord tones can be like substituted and they would still be like, you could like say that someone violated copyright because of chord tone substitution. I'm not sure where he got this idea. If he would like to explain, I'm absolutely down to talk to him about it, but like for the most part, no idea where he's coming from with this. And then aside from all that, the qualities that are pointed out by Alex Shard on these riffs are on their own not protected by copyright. So let me emphasize again what the common elements in question are. It's the length of the riffs, it is the timing of the riffs, it is the scale degrees, and it is the contour. If we are to look to page, technically at the bottom of page 8, but like page 9 of the final opinion as given by the court. I forget what is the court name again? United States Court of Appeals for Ninth Circuit, 2022. That we find Dr. Decker's statement here. He is the musicologist in that is arguing that there is substantial similarity between songs created by Flame and Katy Perry. He says, quote, "The length of each ostinato is similar, 8 notes. The rhythm of the ostinato is similar. The melodic content, the scale degrees present, the melodic shape, so the way the melody moves through musical space, similar. The timbre of the sound is similar, and the use of the placement of this material, this ostinato, in the musical space of the recording in the mix, that is also similar." So that's 5 or 6 points of similarity between the two ostinatos. Alex Sharp doesn't really talk about the recording or the specific timbre of the riffs. However, again, the first 4 elements, the length of the riff, the rhythm, the melodic content, and the melodic shape, they are point for point what Alex Yard is arguing between Spirit Justice and By God Forsaken. What does the court say about this? The evidence presented at trial was legally insufficient to establish that these musical elements are individually copyrightable. So, slam dunk. Exactly Alex Yard's argument, and the court says, nope, that's not enough to justify plagiarism. You need more evidence for that. So, right off the bat, I would say that this is pretty much a slam dunk against Alex Yard. But, of course, that's just focusing on the riff. We need now to talk about the structure. He points out 3 specific elements here. At 4 seconds, there is, on measure 4, a stab that is a sudden hit on the 6th chord. Next up, there's a key change up 1 semitone near the beginning of the piece, as he mentioned in his original comment. And then later on, you extend the turnaround of each of these songs by repeating the 7 chords. So, just going one by one, left to right. Both Spirit Justice and By God Forsaken use very common minor key cadences. In the case of Spirit Justice, it's 6-5-1. This is the same chord progression that you find in Heads Will Roll by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. And for By God Forsaken, they use 6-7-1. You find this in Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. Both of these songs are not only older than both Spirit Justice and By God Forsaken, they're both way more popular and arguably much more household names compared to either of these songs. The fact that each of these cadences also happen in the Spirit Justice by God Forsaken at the end of a 4-measure phrase, which is the almost universal unit of chunking when it comes to musical composition, is also on its own not enough to justify copyright infringement. Next up with the key change, although a key change near the beginning of the song is more noticeable, it's a lot more unique, it also doesn't seem to be enough for copyright. As Yard himself notes in the stream, a key change is already in popular music, already very popular, because, you know, you're on the last chorus, all you have to do is go up like 1 semitone, and all of a sudden you get like a new fresh vibe, right? It doesn't seem that far-fetched to me that someone would take that and just put it at the beginning. That's not something you could really copyright then. In fact, there's even a 19th century piece for piano that does this as a joke. This is part of a larger work of comedic piano pieces. The performance here is made by Piano Curio. Great channel, I recommend them. But I'm not going to play the full song, but just to demonstrate the point that I'm making. So yeah, we see it right here. The piece itself kind of goes through different key centers, but in the first two measures, we start on C major, and then we go into, if I'm analyzing it correctly, like around B flat minor. So right off the bat, this kind of technique has already been established. I'm not saying that either Toby Fox or Skyfire has heard this exact piece and took the idea to do an early key change from that. But the point is, this is not something that you can copyright because somebody already figured it out. It's a little bit silly to claim that this is a unique thing when it's not. Just simple. I don't know. Then when it comes to extending the turnaround, this is arguably Alex Yard's strongest point when it comes to these accusations, which is not saying much, but nonetheless, it is the strongest point. But the issue is that this is a structural thing, extending a turnaround. Like, a turnaround and extending it are themselves pretty base level in terms of like what you're describing. That's not something unique to either Spirit Justice or By God Forsaken. And so because of that, I don't think that a court will say that this itself is protected by copyright either. It's also important to know as well that the amount of times that they extend it is different. Spirit Justice does it 2 times, By God Forsaken does it 4 times. Again, I don't have the audio here of each of the songs because I'm avoiding copyright. However, you can listen to these songs and you can hear, again, Spirit Justice does the turnaround twice, By God Forsaken does it 4 times. So now we're at the conclusion. What can I conclude based off of this whole analysis? First, Alex Yard cannot substantiate that Toby Fox reasonably been exposed to Skyfire's music or heard it. Yes, Skyfire's song is older than any version of Spirit Justice that we have on paper. However, that doesn't mean that Toby Fox could have heard it. Next is that a majority of people seem to disagree that these songs sound similar. Not a lot of people really get the comparison. There is some kind of surface level similarities, but for the most part, people disagree that this is at the very least enough to constitute copyright. And then third off, Alex Yard's analysis of 2 songs does not substantiate any copyright violation. As I've already stated with Gray v. Hudson, the elements that he points out would not be protected under copyright because you can read the opinion. These are all basic building blocks of music. If we were to copyright those elements, then all of music would be in trouble. With all that in mind, Alex Yard has not made a proper legal basis for a copyright lawsuit against Toby Fox. In layman's terms, I don't think Toby Fox plagiarized Skyfire. I don't really know what else to say after this. I guess don't harass Toby Fox, or not Toby Fox, or what? Don't harass Toby Fox either, but don't harass Alex Yard. Don't try to like constantly hound him with all of this. I'm not interested in trying to do personal attacks here. I do have some issues with how he's carried himself in light of these accusations. However, I'm focusing on the music theory here. And I would like for him to do the same if he wishes to respond. That is all. I hope I've made my argument clear. I will see y'all later. Have a nice time.